What's better than boba? Free boba. Boba Face is a mobile game and animated series available for download on your iPhone or Android device. Play and win free boba with Boba Face. Welcome to the Golden Crane Award-winning Color Success Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie J. Wong. Well, I'm so excited to have Kevin on the show today. This is such a treat because this is the first chef that I've ever had on the show. And I've heard so many wonderful things about you, your cooking skills, and also your community work. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
No, thank you. It's my pleasure. It's an honor to be on.
Well, I wanted to get it started and see, can you tell us a little bit more about your journey? I mean, coming from Louisiana all the way to being a top chef.
Oh, yeah. My journey is kind of a crazy one that landed me here in D.C. But first person in my family to be born in the U.S. I was born in Galveston, Texas. From there, I've lived in Hawaii, Seattle, all over Southern California, which is where my extended family lives, to Louisiana, and then from Louisiana to Texas, back to Louisiana, to now the East Coast in D.C.
Wow, you have been all over the place. And I know you're a part of a military family. Is that what led you to Texas?
Yeah, my uncle was in the military. He was in the Air Force specifically. So you know how Asian families normally are like close together and like live together. So my mom and I and my siblings stayed close with my uncle. Whenever he traveled, we would travel as well.
Well, I want to thank him for his service. I've been working with veterans for over a decade, so I know that it is difficult, and also for the families to kind of transition. So, well, what got you interested in cooking?
There's kind of like the cliche story of always being in the kitchen with your grandma and your mom. Even though it's cliche, those are like the best memories for like a lot of people. So for me, it was always like, whether it's stirring something on the stove or making rice, making like enclosed bao buns or dumplings. And then our family always got together for dinner on the weekends. So whether we were grilling or my grandma was making a lot of stuff on the stove, I was always helping out. And then, I cooked all the way through school, no culinary school. And it just like really stuck with me.
So you are a prodigy. Do you do all the cooking in the house now that you're a professional?
It's funny you asked that. And the answer is no, because I cook so much at the restaurant. So normally on my days off, I would rather go out and like support my friends and go visit their restaurants.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like there's been a lot of influence from your family. How do they feel about you being a professional chef?
You know, I'll be honest. It was a little like nerve wracking to tell them that I would like switch from my 9 to 5 to cooking, because my family and a lot of people's families like sacrifice a lot for their kids to not do such like the hard labor, the long hours, to do that 9 to 5, to kind of have like what we call like the white collar job.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, this is what I really love, and they're happy to see me happy. And that was like for me to understand that they sacrificed a lot so I can do whatever I wanted to be happy. Made me feel really good, and they're here to support me all the way. I think it was a lot of like the intergenerational of like making sure that we like lived up to their expectations, and doing like the 9 to 5 really kept me from like being very open with them that I really wanted to cook.
Absolutely. So when did it shift? Was it when you're on TV and they're like, "Oh, Kevin's good now"?
It's funny you asked that, because I think prior, I had been in like Food and Wine magazine and a lot of other like big national publications, and my mom was always like, "Oh, that's really nice." But then when she saw me on the cover of like the small local newspaper from Lafayette, Louisiana, is when she was like, she like got it right, because it was like
you made it.
I made it. She was more impressed that I made the local news being away than like national news.
Yeah, I mean, it's near and dear to your heart, especially. And I mean, you've been back to Louisiana, you've lived there for a little bit. You've also lived in amazing places. I mean, Hawaii, that's kind of a dream. What kind of led you to bounce around a little bit?
Just other than my uncle, like moving around for the military and different jobs. He was specifically a mechanic and like worked on planes. So like Seattle, like there's Boeing's a huge company out there. So he worked for Boeing for a little bit. And then my mom actually had me when she was fairly young. So for her to like work multiple jobs and raise kids at such a young age. And then she also wanted to like go to school and make sure she got her citizenship test. I would like live with my grandma for a little bit so she can like focus on like her career. And then as soon as my mom got her degree, very exciting, you know, and she got like the kind of got to start her career. We were able to start like living with her again in Louisiana because she got a engineering degree, which, very tough to get. I
And
thought about doing engineering.
a
Yeah,
female
absolutely.
in engineering. Yeah.
Male dominated industry, especially in Louisiana, because she does like oil and gas services specifically. But she kills it. She's like top in the company, and she is there to like prove that like someone whose second language is English and that started studying late and does all kinds of certifications. And now she's like one of the top people in the company.
Well, she has a lot of work to do now, given the current sociopolitical situation. We won't get too much into that. But I mean, what was it like to see your mom doing that? Because I mean, I have kids myself. And so there's always a push and pull from mothers of being there for your kids and also showing them that you can succeed and push forward and build a career for yourself.
It definitely wasn't easy. And I think a lot of it is why I like love cooking so much. Because at a young age, I had to cook for like my siblings, being like the oldest, right? Like cooking for my little sister, making sure she had breakfast and then packing her lunch, getting her ready to go to school. And then when she's off of school, my mom's working 2 jobs. So I'm like cooking dinner at night. And then I even remember like there were days like on the weekends, like my mom would study for like her citizenship test. And it would like happen to coincide with like what we were learning in like elementary and middle school.
Yeah.
So we're both studying the same questions, right? Like how many stripes are on the flag? How many stars? Like, when did the U.S. Become like the U.S. and all kinds of other like free enterprise and civics questions.
So there was like a parallel process with studying for sure.
Absolutely.
So I have like more of a funny question, but I know in one interview you mentioned you made a lot of grilled cheese sandwiches and now you have all this different life experience. If you can have one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh man.
Tough question. I know.
Honestly, like nothing beats like a fresh bowl of like steamed rice with literally any topping. It could be like a fried egg. It could just be like pork floss and like soy sauce. But like as long as I have a bowl of like steamed rice, I'm completely happy.
Yeah. And I'm sure there is a trick to making good steamed rice because not all rice is made equally, as I'm preaching to the choir, but for sure. So what other challenges have you faced being an Asian American male in this, I will say it, very white dominated profession?
I'm starting to see kind of like the shift in like this industry, right? I think especially like food media is starting to recognize a lot of like people of color and like women in normally a industry that's normally highly touted for like European white male like fine dining. Like that food is delicious and it's great and there's a place for that. But also like if you look at food across America, it's very diverse and it's very different now, right? And that's what makes like I think our country like so amazing. It's its diversity and like all the different foods you can try and like in different places. I feel like that's how America truly is now when it comes to food. It's no longer like the steak and potatoes. I mean, there are areas that have steak and potatoes, but if you like truly dig deep, you'll see a delicious and diverse America.
So tell us more about your restaurant and what you envision and implement in terms of your dishes.
Moon Rabbit is we say contemporary Vietnamese, and that can be like very broad stroke. I think a lot of people do contemporary Vietnamese, but for us, we actually specifically like don't have like pho or like rice plates on our menu.
Mm-hmm.
So when a lot of people come in, we have to set the expectation like, hey, we are a Vietnamese restaurant, but anything you know about Vietnamese food, like throw it out the window. You're not going to see any of that here, like
Yeah.
zero. No spring rolls, no nothing. But all the flavors are very, very traditional, right? We use like a lot of fish sauce and lemongrass and garlic, shallots and like white pepper and all the herbs. But we present it in all kinds of like different ways. Because I've worked at so many different restaurants, from Mexican restaurants to fine dining, farm to table. So even though the dish can look completely different, it'll taste like 100% familiar.
Right. Well, do you use star anise? That seems to be a staple with my mother-in-law.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, one of the bigger spice containers definitely has all of our warming spices in it.
Yeah, my husband's Vietnamese, so I've lived with my mother-in-law at one point in my life, and just seeing her cook. I mean, it's so funny that I'm interviewing you because I detest cooking, but I love eating it. So my palate, I would say, is very refined. But it's very interesting because I really admire you and, my mother-in-law and my husband and daughter who really take the time to put a lot of thought and presentation into it. I mean, when my 10-year-old makes even the packet tonkatsu ramen, she's putting it in like a nice bowl, and I'm like, I would just eat that up, I just want it done. But I think there's so much artistic aspect of it and creativity. I mean, where do you get your inspiration now when you're making these dishes and putting them together?
I think there's like always this huge conversation of like, what is a truly original dish? And, I don't think anything is like truly original. There's always like some sort of inspiration or pull from somewhere else or another culture. So, I'm always like being inspired by all my colleagues, by what other people are doing across the US, and then finding a way to like make it my own. Right. And I think what's also important is like citing like where you've been inspired,
Giving
I'd
credit.
Like, absolutely. You can't make a dish, change one thing and say, this is a completely original dish. Nothing's original.
Right. So I got to ask, do you yell at your staff like Gordon Ramsay?
I think the last thing I yelled was like, it's hot dog time. Let's go. And then I like grilled a bunch of hot dogs for everybody, or I yell, it's lunchtime. So, I mean, that's the extent of my yelling.
It sounds very mild.
I've worked in those kitchens. I've worked in those kitchens and like, and they suck. And I like don't want to be that kitchen. And I find myself, other than cooking, the thing I do the most is really just like managing people's careers and what they want to do. And then like, how can we best utilize like my position in the restaurant to help them like fulfill their goals? Because as someone who's a head chef, my goal is I want everyone to be more successful than me. And, and how do we do that? Get them to be more successful in their own way, doing like what they want to do.
I mean, you're really big on mentorship, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
And, that is a true mentor right there, because a lot of people will be selfish and want to keep these talented folks at their restaurant, but you're saying, let them learn the skills, let them explore and thrive in their own right. So, you had so many experiences in different kitchens, and, you've also been on Iron Chef Gauntlet. Can you tell me about your experience on the show and the pressures of it? Because they make it super dramatic. And I guess I'm wondering, how does that work in the time pressure?
The time is real. The pressure is real. And, that was my first time like shooting anything like on TV like that. And, I think I can, on the show, I definitely come off as like the young, cocky guy, that's like, that's there to like talk smack. But, it's all for TV. And actually, like all the chefs on that show, we text each other all the time. We're like really good friends. And I'm always like reaching out to them for like advice or their opinion on stuff. But then I did another show, Iron Chef, Chopped Next Generation, and I kind of having experience in this like the production of filming a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
I think I enjoyed the process a little bit more, and I ended up being more successful and actually winning that episode.
That's amazing. Yeah, we love that show. So transitioning a little bit, one of the big things that Caroline mentioned to me is that you're huge in community advocacy, and you started Chefs Against AAPI Hate, and I guess I'm wondering how giving back happened really, because you're busy in the kitchen, and it's like you really took action in terms of helping the community.
The world's like in a weird place, right? And maybe, I guess it's always been in like this like weird place. But I think within the past like 3 years since the pandemic started, a lot of people are being more vocal about it, standing up for what's right, and like going against what's wrong. And for me, how do I figure out like what is my part to play and how can I help? And I'm not rich, so I like can't give a lot of money, and I only have a certain like skill set, which is cooking. So the best thing for me to do is just like cook. I'm doing it every day, so like let me find a way to do what I'm already doing to make an impact. And that was like calling my friends to come cook with me. And I think everybody's hungry. Everybody always wants food.
Yes.
So what a better way to like raise money to do to like make an impact where we can.
Well, you're super humble. You said my skill set is just cooking, and like I said, not a skill set I want to hone. And it's funny because I actually can follow a recipe pretty well, and I'm like, don't tell anyone that, because I'm not taking over those household duties. But what is one question that you wish someone would ask you, and what would your response be?
I think everyone always like assumes like the chef life is like very glamorous, and that's probably thanks to like food shows on TV. But I think if people ask like what my real day to day is like, they'll realize it's like not glamorous at all. This career path, you do sacrifice a lot. And I'm not just talking about chefs. It's like even if you work as like a server or a hostess,
Mm-hmm.
or our dishwashers, who are like the hardest working people in the building, you work crazy hours. It's very labor intensive. It's emotionally and physically taxing. I think if people like truly understood like what goes into like having a restaurant, they would be more okay with paying like the higher price for a meal.
Mm-hmm. Well, what is some advice that you would give folks that are interested in going this profession?
I would say, I'd love to say like, oh, go work at any restaurant and, really experience it for yourself. But like, if we're being honest, not every restaurant has like the best environment, and I think everyone knows that. You've like read the books or
Mm-hmm.
seen movies that parody that. And, unfortunately, like most restaurants or any corporation can be like a hostile like work environment. So it's really finding a company or a restaurant that you align with, right? With what the product they're using, how they support their staff and the community, and then like really working there. Because if their morals align with like what you believe in, then most of the time, then the company itself is a great company to work for.
And I think that's similar to a lot of jobs, right? People are really
Mm-hmm.
looking for a cultural fit at this point. Okay, so you started really young. I started really young in my profession. How do you break in? Because I imagine that you may say, oh, I want to work at Moon Rabbit, with Kevin. And I mean, how does one get into the business in your restaurant when they are brand spanking new?
Well, actually, when hiring, I prefer people with less experience,
Mm.
right? Because I find that they are more eager to learn. And then they don't have any like other habits that they'll fall back on, especially if you're coming into a new cuisine or like new techniques. Some people may like, oh, I've always done it this way and continue doing it that way, as opposed to like learning something the first time and like that's what you know. So I actually encourage people with very little skill to come work here.
That's amazing. And it sounds like you have a community of chefs who you can really rely on to kind of give referrals if it's a different fit that they're looking for. So I have to ask, because we're always in search of how to make fried chicken. What is the secret, so to speak, of making it juicy in the middle and still fried, because it gets so dry sometimes?
The secret is, if you have a chance, you can brine your chicken.
Okay.
For anywhere from like 6 to 24 hours. But if you don't have time to brine it, I think most people like kind of over fry their chicken.
Mm-hmm.
I like to fry it around like 325. And then what I do is you twice fry it, very like Korean style. Right.
I love Korean fried chicken. It's so good.
So what I'll do is I'll like fry it. Like our chicken, we'll fry it for, if it's a full cook time of 10 minutes to like get the chicken cooked all the way, we'll fry it for about 6 to 8 minutes, and we'll actually pull it and we'll let it rest.
Mm-hmm.
And then what will happen is it'll like give time for the meat to rest and the juices to go back into the meat. And then I call it like a sogging out period, because the chicken is so hot, it'll steam and it'll make your outside skin like soft. And after that resting period, if you fry it a second time, the juices are now like back in the meat, and the outside will get extra crispy because of that second fry.
And can you explain to me what brine is?
Yeah. So brining it is kind of creating like a water and salt solution to put your chicken in. So it kind of like just adds more flavor, adds more like liquid to your meat so it stays more moist. And there's all kinds of different things you can do from there. You can do like a basic salt and water brine, or there are some places that are like really like deviate from there. And some people love putting like pickle juice in there, or adding like chilies, and you can add flavors into your chicken that way.
Okay, I think Caroline does brine her chicken. I've seen her do that. So also, because I would probably get kicked in the butt if I didn't ask, any tips for aspiring young bakers for my daughter?
Oh yeah. I mean, just bake. Just keep baking every day. I would say, especially baking, it's way more technical and more of a science.
Yeah.
So really just like be very exact with your measurements. Everything with our pastry program and bread program here, we don't measure anything by the cup or the teaspoon or tablespoon. Everything's done by grams.
Yeah, and then a lot of it is trying to convert it. I'm like, Google it.
Just being exact and just bake a lot. It doesn't makes the house smell nice too.
And you have a baking program. I think you should hire a 10-year-old. I would sacrifice some Virginia time for putting her there. I said, maybe you should learn French, because we can ship you off to Paris at one point. But so where can people learn more about you and stay connected and help out with the charity work?
All right. We have a website, Chefs Stopping AAPI Hate.com. Mm-hmm. We're getting into kind of our busy season because of Asian Heritage Month coming up in May. Yes. So keep a lookout on all our new activities and events coming up.
Kevin, you're such a humble person. I mean, meeting folks like you is why I do this, and hearing about their struggles, but also their successes. I mean, my daughter, her idol is Rosanna Pansino. And I think like on screen, she tells a lot about her struggles, right? In addition to putting out great content. And so This is what this is all about.
Absolutely. So thank you for taking the time and speaking with me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And I am just so grateful that you were here today.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for listening to the Color Success Podcast. Listen, like, subscribe on all major streaming platforms: YouTube, IG, And if you want exclusive content, you can join our Patreon. All links can be found at colorofsuccesspodcast.com.